Alright, this time around we're going to take a look at a function called a displacement map, which is actually part of a filter. The filter is actually under distort and then displace, and when I open this you'll see that it has various information, but part of it talks about a displacement map. And basically what this does is it uses another image to help distort whatever it is you're trying to distort. In this case what we're going to do is this. We're going to first of all create the map that's going to help distort. I'll ultimately take a logo and try and make it look like it's projected onto these drapes. So the first thing to do is to make a map, a displacement map, and the simplest way often to do that is to simply duplicate the image. So I'm holding down the Option or Alt key so it will make a copy without bringing up a dialog box. We need to change this to a grayscale. Now, as you know by now, I'm sure there's various ways to do this. I'm going to simply do it this way by going to Lab Color, clicking on the lightness channel, and then changing the mode to grayscale. That'll do it very quickly for me. And I also want to lighten it up quite a bit. Basically, the way a displacement map works, it's the shades of gray that's going to have an influence on how it follows, so where it sees dark and light. Now, generally speaking, although it varies a little bit with the image, keeping it just the way it is works all right. For example, one of the ways to do this very easily, if I try and do any kind of blur, it tends to be a little bit too much. So instead, if we just go into the noise filter and use despeckle, despeckle is actually a nice way to just sort of soften the focus a bit. And I'm going to hit Command or Control F a couple of more times to accentuate this even further. I need to save this file as a separate document. And we're going to just save it as a PSD, which would be called Photoshop right at the top. Duh. Okay. And we'll call it Drapes Map right there on our desktop. And then we can actually close it. Now, before I do close it, though, one of the things I will mention to you is what you may find is, as you experiment with displacement maps, you may want to go in and further accentuate, darken the darks and lighten the light to try and create even more of this kind of structure and texture to the curves. So now we're going to add a new layer, and I already have our NAP logo built into my custom shapes. I'm sure there's a movie that shows you how to do this too. I'm going to make sure it just fills with pixels, and I'll drag it to make it the size that I want, something like that, and then position it accordingly. Now, this step is very important because in a moment it's going to distort based on the map we created from our drape, so you don't want to have to try and move the logo after that. So make sure it's positioned and sized the way you want, and then we're going to take this top layer and use this distort displace. Part of the trick to this, and it just takes a bit of experimentation in determining what numbers to put in, I would suggest starting low. You can always undo and try a different one. Basically then we're going to click OK, and it's going to ask me what map do I want to use, and I'll use the one we saved a few moments ago. Click Open, and you'll see now it distorts nicely and follows the drapes the way they're positioned. It's all nice and curved and so on. So at this point we can play a little bit and decide, for example, we may want to try the opacity a little bit, lowering it down so it looks a little more like it's projected on there, or play around with one or more blending modes. We might want to try things like screen to see if that makes any difference. Not a whole lot, but it might make a little bit of a difference. But that's the basic principle. Now what you need to do is to experiment and try different variations. What you may want to do right back at the step where we created a map is create 2 or 3 varieties of that map, lighter, darker, with more accentuated folds in the drapes in this example, things of that nature, and then try applying the filter to see what it does. But this is how you can do things, for example, like making a texture look like it's painted on someone's face. It's just to create a map out of the area you want the shape to follow, and then use this filter under Distort and then Displace. It takes a bit of practice, but it's well worth checking out. I'm Dave Cross. As you can see, displacement maps take a little bit of effort, but they're well worth trying out because you can get all sorts of effects. Here's me falling asleep in the sun in the Venetian blinds. Not a great idea. See you next time.